elude the immunity that we got from last year. And so everybody is in the business of predicting what those changes will be and developing a vaccine against what they think is coming. So some years they're right, some years they're less right. So it's possible that the COVID-19 could behave like that, in which case, we're going to have to develop vaccines on a regular basis and develop some public health techniques around anticipating what's coming. So there's so much to
digest.
That remains to be seen,
Right. Yep, absolutely.
So we have some school districts here in Mass that are doing a 2-week break. Some have gone up to 4 or 5 weeks. Some are doing the next 4 days, and then we'll let you know. What would be your opinion on the have everybody not get in big groups timing element?
I think that's huge. The expression that's come out is social distancing. I kind of find that term is a little bit dysphoric, right? I mean, social distancing is don't touch me kind of thing. I think that's unfortunate. But the reality here is that what we need is the way this is transmitted is people getting together and somebody in the group passes it to the next person. It's actually not a particularly infectious virus compared to many others, but it's infectious enough that if we all keep getting together, then, one person spreads it to another person, and then it just kind of multiplies. So closing large social gatherings is exactly the right thing to do. And, the last major pandemic, which was the influenza pandemic of 1918, we have data from back then that showed that the areas of the country that rapidly shut their school systems did better, had fewer infections and fewer deaths than the areas that kind of poo-pooed that and tried to have life as normal. So as much as we would like to kind of say, it's no big deal, it's just kind of another flu and let's ignore it and life as usual, turns out that isn't the best approach. And all these school shuttings or closing Broadway as we saw today, all of that is exactly the right thing to do.
And so you're supporting all the leagues shutting down, Broadway shutting down, schools shutting down, college kids being sent home. All of these things are the only way to handle something like this and to get ahead of it, I guess, is the way to look at it, right?
Yes, that's exactly right. And, but at the same time, we also have to acknowledge that it comes with a cost, right? I mean, we're looking at a major upheaval to our economy, and that's not just to the billionaires. It's to the people, the kids who aren't going to get fed at school, although, frankly, they could get fed at home by the school system. But, the point is, if you're working 3 jobs to make ends meet, it's going to become that much more difficult. Your life is that much more high risk if you're taking public transportation to get to those jobs. And some of those jobs are probably not going to survive because we know that small businesses are going to be hit the hardest. So, a lot of what happens there, frankly, is going to depend upon what our federal government does to try and protect us from it. We have to protect against the virus. We also have to protect against the economic ramifications of the protections against the virus. I think there's a lot to be written. I don't unfortunately have a ton of faith in the current administration to yes. I'm trying to be vaguely political about this, but
you can't. It's a nightmare. Let's cut right to at least everybody knows how liberal I am, and oh my God, that's such a nasty word these days. But the bottom line is you need leadership at a time like this, and we just don't have it, and that is the biggest. To me, that's the biggest prerequisite to be a president of the free world, if you will, and we just don't have it. But I do want to go back to one more thing that you said, and I want to see if we can nail this down a little bit. You mentioned large gatherings. We've heard the definition of what large is. I think the CDC put it out there as 250, but I've also heard 500. I've also heard 1,000. In your feelings, in your certainly educated opinion, what is a large gathering, Dr. Tischler?
Well, you know what? So the point is that you ask exactly the right question, and it depends on which day you ask the question and of whom you ask the question. Certainly, they started out with a sort of 250, and then it went down to 100. And I think that the most stringent that I've heard from any agency at this point is 25. Now, my mom, who's 80 something.
Yeah.
Hi, Mom. She asked me today, what about her book club, which are a bunch of all 80-something-year-old retired physicians who get together to chat about books. And there are a whopping 8 of them in that group. And so, you get 2 doctors in a room, you get 3 opinion points, either individually or as an administrative group. You just kind of have to draw a line in the sand and hope you're in the right place.
Well, all right. You guys got anything else for the doctor before we say goodnight to him?
That was great.
I have something I'd like to bring up, if
Sure.
I may.
Knock yourself out. Your time.
Well,
your time.
we sort of touched on this at the beginning and never really got to it, which was, what can we do to protect ourselves from the coronavirus, and in particular as cannabis users? So we talked about the social distancing. We talked about washing your hands and not shaking hands. I'm not shaking hands with my patients anymore. We're doing, fist bumps or elbow bumps or whatever, which frankly is very hard for me to remember to do that because we're all so ingrained to stick out our hands. But we're trying. And there's Purell everywhere. But let's think about what are the things that uniquely cannabis user kind of behaviors? Well, it's getting together in large groups and standing around and smoking weed, right?
Right.
Don't do that.
Right.
Just don't do it. Don't get together with a group. Don't share the bowl. Don't share the joint. Don't share the blunts. You shouldn't smoke a blunt anyway. And tobacco is poison. But, those are the things that we have to kind of bring into the cannabis using culture that kind of go above and beyond what's being messaged to the general population.
Right.
So those are my 2 cents on that.
Yeah, and that's why I like this Weedjet product, okay? Because you can have personalized joint sharing, if you will, because you could just take that out, hand it to somebody else. He or she puts it back onto their own filter right here.
This is the little glass tip we're talking about?
No, it's a disposable filter on the end and a silicone filter in the middle, and it's part of the Weedjet.
Yes.
Here's the maze pipe right here, and of course, we're trying to push these things. And if you use Weed Talk 2020 online and order one of these, you can actually save some money. So personalized and individual usage of and disposal of instead of sharing the joint. So that's what we're looking for here, and that's what I think they provide.
I think those are great little devices. I just would worry that the distance between you and your smoking buddy might be short enough, shall we say, that you could transmit one to the other, having nothing to do with a Weedjet, but
Right.
just simply through the contact.
Right.
So I think as much as cannabis aficionados tend to be very friendly, social animals, I think this might be the time to hunker down with your favorite indica and watch television or
read a
on
book,
Facebook or whatever. Read a book. That was on my list.
Yeah,
I'd
but
be the lonely stoner.
That's right. The lonely stoner.
The lonely stoner with Netflix.
Stoner.
That's it.
That's it.
The lonely stoner. We got it. Watch Disjointed.
Yeah,
That's right.
there you go.
Oh, boy. Here we go. All right, Dr. Jordan Tischler, again, thank you for taking the time. I appreciate it. I know it was on short notice, and you've always been there. You've always been there for me whenever I've asked, and I do appreciate that.
It's a pleasure.
All right.
Take care, gentlemen.
Thank you, sir.
Talk to
Thank
you
you.
soon.
That is
Bye-bye.
Dr. Jordan Tischler. Inhale MD is where you can find him. He's got an office in Brookline, I believe also in Cambridge. So that's where you could find him. And if you have any questions at all about using cannabis, how to use cannabis, how to protect yourself from the coronavirus, and also enjoy one of your favorite products, perhaps, I think you got some good tips there as far as how to protect yourself. But again, it goes back to washing your hands, keeping distance socially from others. Try not to handshake. I agree with Dr. Tischler in that it's very difficult, even for me, somebody who's outgoing as I am. I'm always extending my hand to people, and I washed it many times now, so at least I feel confident that I'm not transmitting anything, nor do I have any of the symptoms of that coronavirus. And I think in the next half hour, we're actually going to talk to one of our friends, Hillary King, who has been in bed with the flu over the last few days, and as far as we know, she does not have the coronavirus, but just another bad virus. And
We're going to ask her about using cannabis. I'm asking.
you can ask.
Is she using it for a virus? Does it help, hurt? How's she feel?
You're really looking for somebody to say yes.
I got somebody step up here and tell me THCA is working for him, and I feel great during this flu. So
We need somebody to call in who will tell Kurt
Yep.
eating edibles all day long is good.
It's absolutely mandatory. CDC has recommended it, and everybody should get to their legal
Right,
dispensary and get
right.
tested products.
Licensed, tested, legal products. Exactly. But isn't the whole point, isn't what we know about the endocannabinoid system, what we've learned, is that it enhances the immune system. It right? It balances our nerve transmitters. You know, neuron 1, neuron 2. I need a scientist. One of the scientists I reached out to were willing to come on tonight to talk. I'm sure they were just afraid of saying the wrong thing or liability or whatever. But because the knowledge base right now, even in the scientific community, is small about what's going on. But I mean, here's a simple concept. I'm going to throw it out there again, where you can actually have a double filter situation with your pre-roll. And you can certainly consume it by yourself if you want. It's as simple as that. And that is supposed to enhance your immune system, which is designed to fight off viruses like this.
We had one doctor say not enough research, and one doctor say there's studies that show immune system strengthening, and then there's immune system repression. There's just not enough research. Welcome to a Schedule I drug that we can't research, and we should go to Israel and ask because they probably know.
That's right, and they've shut down Israel too.
Yeah,
they've shut down the borders of
World
Israel.
World War Z. Here we go.
That's right, and you know what? I can't say that, but I'd really like to, but I'm not going to. What's happened in Italy is pretty amazing. When you think about I think it was 2 weeks ago, they had something like 230 cases, and in 2 weeks they had 10,000.
Right. Geometric progression, right?
But what are they doing in Italy that they aren't doing in other countries? I mean, they're not shutting down their schools? Are they shutting down they did shut down Serie A, I believe, the soccer league in Italy. But I mean, isn't that the first step? That's obviously what we've done here in the United States.
Well, here's what they have. They've got something very different than what we have. They have test kits.
Aha.
If you don't test it, you can't tell.
Right.
Right?
Right. And we have a shortage of test kits in this country right now, and
right.
And that again.
So I heard one of the professionals on TV yesterday say our numbers are skewed because we're looking at how many cases there are, but we're only testing the people that are sick.
Yep.
Right.
And if you don't test a wider population, you can't really get your arms around it.
Right.
And they're talking about you got like 5 days when it's getting together in your body, and you're very you can pass it on. Right?
Right. No, and it's asymptomatic. That is probably the biggest challenge right now in our world, is that you could be walking around with it for a couple of days, if not a week, and infecting all the people you're shaking hands with and saying hello to. So it's a challenge. It's just unprecedented in my lifetime, guys. I don't know if any of you, were you around for the swine flu? That was a pretty big deal too, right? Quite a few people passed from that.
What about the Spanish one? How was that on you?
I'm generally healthy.
1800s.
My problem.
1800s. He was not around the 1800s. Neither was I for that.
Check the birth certificate there, Jimmy.
I have checked.
Hey, we got to go to commercial.
It says Baby Boy Young, Beth Israel Hospital, Newark, New Jersey. We're going to take a commercial on the other side. We're going to come back, and we are going to talk with Hillary, who we hope is feeling a little bit better
She'll
today.
tell me to do edibles. Come on, Hillary.
We'll be back with more. Don't go away.
Hi, I'm Ben Shire, New England rep for Salient Video Management Systems. Let me tell you what makes us different in the security space. We're your trusted advisors for all your security needs. I know how complicated the regulations are in cannabis, and working with Salient Systems will be the polar opposite of that. I give free consultations and will walk you through every step of the process so that you can get what you need at the price you can afford. We're robust, we're simple and scalable. We're Salient Systems, your solutions to all your security needs. Please contact me at the information below, and I'm looking forward to being your trusted advisor.
The human eye really can't tell the difference between 1080 and 4K unless it's really right next to each other and you're doing it. But in security, what is the resolution capabilities of some of these cameras?
So your resolution can go anywhere from a 1 megapixel to a 20 megapixel, and sometimes a little bit more. For industry standards, 8 is about normal. Is what people look for on the regulation side. 8 to 15. I think the regulation here in Massachusetts is 15 frames per second.
Gotcha.
As far as resolution, so that's that's close to close to what the eye would see, but actually it's a little less, about 24 frames. 24 frames per second is what the human eye can see, is as far as the resolution on the video side.
Right.
So there's different scales, but I definitely like to consult that. You want to have a good quality resolutions, especially your entry points, your choke points. Depending on how your, either your farm is set up, an exterior farm or interior farm, you always want to make sure you have your choke points, with the highest resolution, with a robust system, so that you can identify exactly what's going on, see, for the regulation side.
Hey, that's our new friend, Ben Shower from Salient Systems, and that, of course, is a video security service, and he is your New England rep, and he's a great guy. I can give him a plug. Maybe I just embarrassed him a little bit. Everybody, welcome back to the Weed Talk Live show. I'm Jimmy Young from ProCannabisMedia.
And I'm Kurt Dalton from Cannabis.net.
And I'm David Rabinovitz, and again, still happy to be here.
I appreciate that. And David, you've got a few projects that we do want to get to, but I do believe we have Hillary on the line. And am I right, guys? Is Hillary King with us? Do I get any kind of confirmation? No, thank you. No confirmation. We're going to reach out to her. So, David, I'm going to throw it to you now. And this is what we call Phil. Tell us what are some of the projects you're working on for NewCan.
So, well, it's not just NewCan. We're working with a couple of clients on some cultivation facilities that are going to be great for social equity players. We had a private get-together in Worcester a few weeks ago. Did a survey, and what we learned is that most of the people who are in the social equity program, or those that attended, are most in. Oh, looks like we've got Hillary coming in.
Yep. So hold that
So
thought.
we're going to come back to this.
Don't let me forget. Okay. All right, Hillary King, are you out there? And how are you feeling?
I am. I'm here, Jimmy.
Oh, you
How you doing?
You don't sound. I'm really glad that you can't catch this through the phone, okay? Because you don't sound good. And I tell you, I give you a lot of credit. I don't know very many females that would actually take a selfie in their hospital bed and then share it on Facebook. Okay?
I don't know. I've seen a lot of people do that.
Yeah, well, that's because you're a lot younger than me.
Yeah.
Do you want me to read a couple of your statements? I did a little bit of this, but right now, as far as you know, you are not testing positive, or they sent you home without a test for COVID-19. Yes.
Yeah, that's right. They tested me for influenza, and that was negative.
Okay.
And at that point, with knowing where I've traveled in the last week in New York City, where, by the way, I saw a whole flight attendant crew from Cathay Pacific Airlines in my hotel lobby in New York last Friday. And then I live, a stone's throw from the Long Wharf. I live in the North End in Boston, which is a popular neighborhood, and I'm sure those folks at the conference were coming down for Italian food and cannolis. So, you just don't know. But they listened to my lungs and they did some tests and said that they think it's possible that I have it. And they really want to test me for it. And they're frustrated that they can't because this is the way that they explained it to me, is that MGH doesn't have their own supply of tests for this. And so they're relying on the state and the Department of Public Health. They have to test through them now. And because there aren't enough tests, they are saving them for people who meet this strict criteria, which is, A, having symptoms, and then either having known direct contact, that you've been in direct contact with somebody who is tested positive, they've confirmed to have COVID, or you've been out of the country in an area of outbreak in the last 30 days. And I didn't meet either of those criteria. So, most of the people that I saw in the screening clinic were actually just sent home without even an influenza test or anything like that. And for me, they actually, after those tests, they had actually admitted me to the ER and put me in an isolation room and, treated me as if I do have it. And, basically what they said was that they called up the chain to the DPH to ask if they could make an exception for me. And they said no. So they, just because I don't meet that criteria. And
Did you tell him
so
you know Jimmy?
Don't make her
I was
laugh.
going to say.
Come on, that's not fair.
Hillary, I need to know, have you been using cannabis the last few days, and is it helping you? You're my last hope.
I have not been smoking, no.
Edibles?
But
Anything?
I have been using cannabis. I have been using my CBD ingestibles. I have some THC infused honey from All Kinds that I've been using, and I'm having edibles at night, like I usually do. But
what is it like if you do an edible with whatever virus you have? Walk us through how it feels. An hour or two, you feel better, worse? Kind of what happens after the honey?
yeah, you feel better, but I don't think that that's necessarily because it's doing something to the actual symptoms. I think it's, calming your mind, calming your body, making you feel good. THC, the endogenous form of THC is called anandamide, and ananda is the Sanskrit word for bliss. So, when THC binds to those same receptors, it makes you feel good, and can kind of take your mind off of it, help relax, your muscles in your body. I've been having a lot of body aches and just general, stuff like that.
Malaise.
So it definitely takes the edge off. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm malaise, and it does take the edge off. So there you go, Kurt. You happy now?
I'm in.
Yeah, Kurt, go ahead.
Starting tomorrow. I feel
all day.
twice a day. We're starting tomorrow. Hillary told me.
But get some CBD in there too,
Oh, come on. That's the legal stuff.
Well, we understand the entourage effect that the CBD works better when it has a little more THC to it, right?
Right.
So you are definitely a test case, actually, Hillary, I guess, to see how this can affect the COVID-19 virus. Let me ask you a question. A lot of media people have been talking to you, yes?
Yeah, they have. I posted about my experience at the hospital on Facebook, as you mentioned, and it went viral. Pun intended, and it got over 3,000 shares at this point. And in my personal network, I know some of the reporters in the cannabis scene. So a couple of them came. A couple of these calls from reporters came just straight from people I know, and a couple were, people that I didn't know, just reaching out. Another interesting thing, somebody that I know, around the cannabis industry who actually works for the state, for the CCC, reached out to me. Bless him. This was just really amazing. He reached out and he said, "Hey, can I do anything to help you? I have contacts if you need some help." And so he put me in touch with a city councilor's office, Michael Flaherty's office. And they got on the phone with me pretty immediately. I told them what was going on. And they said they'd do some digging, and they called me back about 20 minutes later and said that they had called around, and what they found, and this came from the mayor, the Boston mayor's office health line, was that the regulations that are keeping me from getting tested are federal ones. And so there's not much they can do.
That, I'm sorry, that would absolutely piss me off beyond.
I think it goes back to we don't have enough kits. If we had 1 million of them laying around, she'd get tested. But it's crazy that you got tested for the flu, you don't have it. We think you have
COVID-19. Go ahead.
But we can't test you for that. Good luck.
Go into self-quarantine,
Yeah.
right? And did they say 14 days? And can I ask you, don't you have a live-in partner?
Yeah, they said 14 days from the onset of symptoms, and that's as long as your symptoms have gone away. So it could be longer if the symptoms persist.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, I do. I live with my partner, Antonio. He actually works out of our home. We have a Pilates equipment studio here in the North End that he teaches private lessons out of. So, that's going to be disrupted. But, he actually is not in the country right now. He's in Costa Rica leading a yoga and Pilates retreat with a group from the Boston area. And he left on Sunday morning, so in the back of all of our minds that, you know, he might have, if this is what I have, if, you know, he may have been exposed while I was asymptomatic before he left, which is kind of crazy to think about. I don't even want to go down that rabbit hole.
Right, right, but it's part of this whole journey.
It
right?
is, exactly, you know. So he's supposed to fly back, excuse me, on Sunday. And
where's he going to stay?
Right now,
where's he going to stay?
He's not going to come home.
Okay.
You know, I'm gonna glove up and put a mask on and put a bag together for him today, and then leave it outside the door so that, you know, they kind of are suggesting certain number of hours that this virus can live on different surfaces. So I'm going to leave him some things outside the door today, so that when he gets back, he's got what he needs, and then, you know, he's going to go stay at our friend's apartment down the street. And, you know, we have a good friend who lives in the neighborhood and just happens to be out of town till the end of the month. So he's going to stay over there so he can be right down the street and, you know, bring me anything I need.
And are you, I was going to say, how are you getting food? Are you doing takeout, delivery? Are you even eating anything? I know, you know what? First of all, you don't have to stay on the phone anymore, Hillary. It's okay. You know,
He's asking you what you're ordering out from Grubhub
right,
at this point.
Right.
Go to bed.
At this point, you know what? Just stop talking.
Yep.
Take lots of fluids.
Or honey.
Get some honey and tea. It could be the magic honey. And more importantly, we are thinking of you. We want you to get better.
Thank you, guys.
Okay, and thank you for actually calling in and telling your story to the world. And gosh, tomorrow you're going to be all over the news. It'll be interesting to see what happens with you, Hillary. We wish you the best of luck.
Try to get
tested.
tested.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
You bet. That's Hillary King. You know, usually, David, she sits right where you are.
Yep.
Just want to say.
She spits a lot when she talks, too. I don't know.
No,
luckily, we're a monthly show, so you're okay now.
And luckily, Mike Zodos of Performer TV made it a point to tell us that they wipe everything down.
Fumigate.
And he's fumigated, and he's done a great job in getting as much germs out of here as possible.
That's good.
Okay? Back to what you were telling us a little bit, David, before we got Hillary on the line. What are some of the projects you're working on?
So we're working with a developer who wants to put together a shared facility for cultivators. So think about it like this. A social equity player could come in, rent 5,000 square feet in a 50,000 square foot building, and he's going to have most of it set up. I'm working with two folks this way. And in each one of the cases, we're working on getting a host community agreement. So instead of somebody having to go through a year of pain to get set up and started, once he has a license, he'll be able to bring people in and let them grow within their facility while they go through the licensing process, right? Really tipping a lot of what's going on its head and getting small craft growers into the business.
How frustrating is it that 4 years in after the vote that we're just now starting to see some action for the economic empowerment people and the social equity? You know how upset I get about it.
Right, but I look at it differently. I'll tell you what's more frustrating to me. More frustrating to me is there's 35 to 40 stores open right now. And one of the commissioners in the Cannabis Control Commission was interviewed and said they hope in 2020 we're going to double the number of stores out there. So imagine if we had 37, 38 stores and they're hoping to get to 75 by the end of the year when you've got 80 people who have provisional licenses, which means we've got a commissioner who doesn't have a clue about what the numbers are, or they know all sorts of things that they're not disclosing to the people in the industry. Either way, that's not good.
Yeah, and again, it's time that and a lot of people are they bitch, and yet a lot of people come back to the defense of the CCC too because they have such a difficult job. Well, you know what? Do your job.
Look, they have a difficult job, and they may not have all their resources. But as you know, I'm a real data hound. You got to be clear on what your data is, and if you're the people who are running the industry, you should know what's going on within your own organization. It shouldn't be, because if that commissioner is correct, and they're only going to double the number of retail stores this year, you're going to see a lot of people run out of money. There's 80 provisional licenses.
Which means all of those
80.
They have a spot, right, that they're paying for?
They've
Yes.
got a spot. They're probably paying for it. They got their local approval. They've now been approved at the first round by the CCC, and now what they need to do is get the store set up. Which means if they can't be licensed by September, something is really wrong with the system. Really wrong with the system.
So there's these bottlenecks, and you've talked about them, from the landlords to the approval of towns who don't want it. What are the two biggest bottlenecks? What, if you were the commissioner, what are the two bottlenecks that are completely slowing this down? What would you change? Boom and boom.
Boom and boom. Number one, I would allow for basically master licensees, somebody to do what we're going to try to do with these cultivation centers. Because you've got a lot of people who want to get into the business, and there's a lot of ways to get people into the business. The other thing I would do is figure out a way to get some of the barriers down, and we figured some of that out. I'm working with somebody else on that, another prospective party that wants to get into the cannabis space. I call it the Nabisco model, right? There's a lot of people who've been creating edible products and other marijuana-related products for 30 years, 20 years, and they're out in the market. They have a small customer base, and they said, wow, this is cool. I can get a license, and I'm going to get my stuff into stores. And then they begin to look at what they have to go through, and I'm not going to repeat what one of them said at a MassCan meeting, but I listened to somebody who told me there's no way that they're going to go through what they think they have to go through to get a license. So they're just going to stay in the illicit market. There should be a mechanism to get those people into the market, and it should be a lot easier than it is, and I think you could put in master licensees that could allow people to operate underneath them.
What about financial incentives or something like that? I mean, I don't get that.
This whole issue now of they're trying to convince the legislature to give them a fund so they can give out 0% loans.
Yeah.
I think it's good there's going to be a fund. I don't think that people need 0% loans. This is not a low-margin business, especially not right now. And there's no reason. The smaller operators need access to capital. They don't need free capital, and free capital means if there's no return coming back in, how do you help the next group and the next group and the next group, right? Because if one of them fails, now your fund goes down. You drop a little bit. You get a return on it, so people have an incentive to pay it back as soon as they can, and then you're helping the next group and the next group and the next group. There's a lot of things that could be done to help streamline this. I mean, what we're trying to do right now is I got two developers who want to help small cultivators, and I think with the way we're approaching it, I'll probably know within about 6 weeks if we're going to be able to pull off the first piece of this. But that would allow people to get into business really fast. Marijuana agent establishment card. Ask the Cannabis Control Commission if you could qualify to be an executive of a licensee, and if they say yes, you're off and running, and you're getting your license while you're running your business under a master licensee.
What
I like that idea.
Like, what did Oklahoma and Illinois do so much different? I mean, Oklahoma has
800.
It's like 2,900 dispensary approvals in like a night. Where did we just go?
I
the wrong way.
I wouldn't look at Oklahoma. I've read a little bit about Oklahoma. I haven't looked at all the regulations, but I don't think Oklahoma is such a big market that they should have that many licenses.
Oh, sure.
So
no doubt.
from that point of view, I think we're better off than Oklahoma, because Oklahoma's going to wake up one day and realize that they've turned into Oregon.
Or Colorado
right?
in the beginning, yeah.
Yeah, you got way too many people. They can't make money. They've got an investment. They need to cover their investment, so they begin to skirt a little bit of the law.
Yep.
Right.
And yet here we are. A lot of people, the people, if you will, voted this in, and you think that they voted it in so that those who enjoy this subject or this product, would feel much better about where it came from, what's in it, what's it going to do with me. In other words, it's almost like the people in power have done everything they can to screw up what the people who voted it in wanted.
Yeah, but again, I'll come to a little bit of defense of the state.
Yep.
Had all the knowledge.
Yeah.
And they really didn't do a great job at disseminating that knowledge to all the towns, right? You got most of Massachusetts are small towns. So now they get dropped in their lap this issue of they now need to figure out how they're going to make cannabis work. And some of them figured it out in a way that works, others didn't, and some punted. Take Natick, right? Natick was told by the Attorney General in December 2018, you guys are delaying, and therefore you don't qualify to extend your moratorium. You need to start taking applications when your December 31, 2018 moratorium is up. And Natick, to their credit, did not put in another moratorium. All they did was they refused to take applications. So for 13 and a half months, they're not taking applications until sometime in 2020. And over that period of time, the big, deep-pocketed investors scooped up the best real estate and sat on it. So what Natick has effectively done is made it so that they have a nice process, but none of the social equity and none of the economic empowerment applicants can get a toehold in Natick. They're not going to be allowed to compete. It's basically a rigged system.
And you have now the FBI coming in, asking towns for data and for documents, because there was a shenanigans where the town said, well, hey, all right, we're all going to get a piece of this action. We're going to throw in an extra tax, an extra fee. You're going to support the police. You're going to support this club over here. And
yeah,
they cried foul, the applicants and the guys who got the license.
So here's something to think about, right? Step back and take a look at that as to forget about whether it was right or it's wrong. Look at who's doing it. Andrew Lelling, the U.S. attorney, is now doing something that Maura Healey should do, but Maura Healey's office doesn't like marijuana, so she won't help the industry. And when people in the industry have gone to the Massachusetts Attorney General to say what some of the communities are doing is wrong, they've basically been told, go away, we don't handle that. Right. That's wrong. I mean, that people should remember that when they go to the polls. Right. When the U.S. attorney has to step in to do the attorney general's job
of the state
attorney general's job, that's something wrong. And this wasn't a case that everybody was so quiet about it. There's been a lot of industry screaming. There's a lot of nonprofits that have been complaining. There have been complaints lodged with the AG's office, and the AG's office says, we don't have any jurisdiction over host community agreement issues. Well, somehow the U.S. Attorney's Office does.
Right. Well, again, they have done everything possible to delay and retard the growth and the launch of a huge industry in their backyard that can be beneficial to local towns who are losing money, needing money to fill the potholes in their towns, repair the bridges, actually maybe even put money into education. And then here in the state taxes, they're not even distributing that money to where it needs to go.
Yeah, that's true.
So are we corrupt, or are they just continuing to deal with the stigma? They say this is a necessary evil. I don't want to deal with it. I don't want to learn about it, and I want it away from me. So I'm just going to make it go away.
Edibles. Calm down. Let's give him an edible. Edible. Oh.
I got some right here. I mean,
edible. Whoa, blood pressure. Give me your perfect okay, not counting Bernie. What's the best outcome for cannabis in this election? Not you have to take Bernie out because that's the obvious one.
Well, look, I think right now it's obvious that Joe Biden, the best. Forget about politics, right? And I'm more of a centrist. The best outcome for cannabis is a really strong Democratic contender who says I'm going to legalize it, and that the current administration decides that they would like a whole bunch of voters to stay home, and a week or two before the election, they deschedule marijuana to take all the energy out of people's sales so that a whole bunch of the Bernie types will just stay home, right? Think about this. When you're happy, you get relaxed. You tend not to have as much energy. When you're mad as hell, you get very energetic. You see people who are holding signs, generally they're upset about something. So if you want to take people who are upset about marijuana and the state of legalization and what's going on in the country, and you don't want them to vote, it's real simple. Deschedule marijuana.
I know. You know who else has said that for the last... You've heard me say this. I won't be surprised. I said to Steve D'Angelo, when we sat down and talked with him in September, I said, I'm not going to be surprised that a week before the election, he who should not be named or will not be named by me, will pick up the phone and deschedule cannabis in order to get those votes. And
not to get the votes, Jimmy. He won't pick votes up. What will happen is he will cause people to not vote for
the Democrats.
Right? And I'm not taking a position one way or the other. Your question, Kurt, was, what do I think is the best thing for cannabis? That's probably the best outcome.
Yeah, because we don't have that candidate, though, like you named, the centralist candidate of a Democrat saying I'm going to legalize it without counting Bernie. So Biden, I don't feel would do that. I think,
No, Biden, the last I heard, just wants to drop it down to a
criminalize
Schedule
it.
2.
Oh,
right?
Schedule 2, give it to the FDA or to give it to Big Pharma, which is like a lot of people will tell you in cannabis that's worse.
Yeah.
Right.
That's going to be 100% controlled by
That's
the
the
government.
worst.
but-
That's the worst nightmare of the,
Yeah,
of the
that's like-
industry. That's what they're saying.
Yeah.
Yeah, but again, without going too far down to politics,
Yep.
the only way the Democrats are going to win are going to be to coalesce. And in order to coalesce, they have to bring Bernie on board. And to bring Bernie on board, they're going to have to pick up some of his platform.
Oh, that's an interesting little twist.
Well, as long as they have a change at the leadership level in this country, I'm going to be happy. What can I tell you? I make no secrets. I make no secrets which side of the fence I'm on.
So remember, we're on the marijuana side of the
Yeah.
fence tonight, not politics.
And
That's
honestly,
fine.
a lot of this may come down to how long this virus lasts and what the market looks like come the fall. Because
Right.
The market is tanking, and right now in Japan, the market's tanking, and the Dow futures are down. So if you like blood in the street, and if you believe in online communications, buy some Zoom communication stock.
That's what
tomorrow.
you love.
It's
Wait.
going down more.
Can't they just stop trading? Can't they?
They do,
They do
Jimmy.
it on a day. It's like this. I understand.
There's
that.
a trigger.
Right.
As soon as the S&P drops, I think it's
7%. Yeah,
7%, it automatically kicks in a 15-minute stop in the market.
But is 15 minutes really going to make a difference? I mean, shouldn't they just like they're putting the entire world on hold for a couple of weeks? Call me crazy and nuts because it won't be the first time.
What you're going to see is
The 15 minutes is because of computerized trading.
Right.
Yeah. At some point, though, there'll be buyers in the market who say, look, if this isn't going to get that bad, if this ends up being a longer blip of 90 days, we're still going to recover, and I will buy these stocks at X level, and that's how a market bottoms. Is someone
right.
says, you know what, at Dow 12,000, I'm in, or whatever the number's going to
Look,
be.
think
Right.
about Warren Buffett, right? He loves stocks. And I read something about Warren Buffett a few years ago that I've taken to heart. And he said, I love stocks. So if you love something when it goes on sale, don't you buy more?
Yeah,
so when the
100%.
market goes down like this, I'm
He
sure
loves
he's
it.
buying like crazy.
Thomas English muffins. When it's buy one get one, I stock up on them.
Well, there you go. Start looking at the stocks that you like in the market.
Might be a
because
better investment.
It's getting down to buy one, get one time, right?
Buy one get one. Okay, what's next? What's next for the cannabis industry in the world in the country? Are we going? Go ahead.
Here's what's next.
What's next?
The big issue right now that I see on the horizon is going to be cultivation canopy. I don't think that I'm not seeing that there is a strong anybody's got their handle on how much cultivation canopy there is in Massachusetts. I looked at it in late
Define cannabis canopy, please.
canopy indoor
canopy.
the
Indoor cultivation.
So the license classes. You can have a license, and you can, as a licensed grower in Massachusetts, you can be licensed to grow up to 100,000 square feet of canopy. So you can get a license that is from 0 to 5,000, 5 to 10, and then it goes 10 to 20, all the way up to 90 to 100, right? I went through and looked at all the licenses that have been handed out and took a look at how much canopy there is on licensed growers. The range is 1.8 to 2.5 million as of late January. Then I looked, there was about 124 cultivation applications behind that. And I assumed if they're going to look the same as what's out there, we could be in the almost 6 million square feet of canopy range. I don't know how much canopy we need. And if somebody out there knows, I'd be thrilled if you drop me a line. I'd love to talk to you about it. But we're going to get to the point where we've got enough canopy. But with the licensing going so slow and so many people in so many license applications in the queue, that when supply and demand finally come into balance, they're not going to stop, because you're going to have people who have provisional licenses and people who have already applied. And if they stop at that point, it's going to take a year before they catch up and realize that we've got too much capacity. And the place I would hate to be as an investor is overcapacity in a long-term capital investment, which is cultivation, when you got a short-term product, which is agriculture. I mean, I haven't yet seen anybody who grows apples or avocados inside a warehouse. And think about, right, Bruce Linton. It would have been nice if he were on tonight. His former firm just idled 3 million square feet of greenhouse space, in part because they're growing outdoors. Now, I've listened to everybody tell me how I'm nuts thinking you can grow outdoors in Massachusetts. But
Hey.
sounds like they can do it in Canada. And if they can do it in Canada, they can do it down here.
And how was that winter we just had? right? I mean,
well-
there is climate change going on. I think we all
No, you're
going
going to see climate change in the next 10 days. You remember what happened after the terrorist attacks in 2001? How when they grounded all the airplanes, what the APA found out was the air quality in the United States within about a week went through the roof. It was much better. Well, now that the airlines are starting to ground flights because there's not enough demand, I bet you're going to hear within the next couple of weeks, when things begin to die down a little bit, that the air quality is substantially improved.
Let's hope
Which
that
will help outdoor grows.
Right.
I happen to think the outdoor grows, I think outdoor grows and greenhouses are very good ideas. And one of the reasons is I've listened to people say you can't make money using greenhouses. But even if you can't grow all year long, when you start to talk to people with sizable grows and they're talking about $200,000 a month plus for electric bills,
Right.
man,
Well, that's why I think the solar industry, that's why solar therapeutics, I think that the cannabis industry should not be required necessarily to be solar, but there should be financial incentives to go solar, just like they do with your houses now, right?
as soon as there's enough grow and supply and demand come into play, come into balance, prices are going to come down, and you're going to see a lot more people trying to grow outside because the risk of crop theft will go down. I talked to somebody who you know well, Maggie, who has told me that they believe they will get their pricing down, and this is small grows, down to $100 a pound.
Wow.
Right?
And that's good.
Wow.
I remember
Massachusetts,
that.
Yeah, I was going to say Maine is, that's getting down there.
Right. You're not going to have to go up to Maine, Kurt.
Right. No. Hey,
Think of all the gas you're going to save.
That's right.
yeah, and bring down the air quality is going to improve around my house.
All right, I got to wrap
All right.
this up, guys. David Rabinovitz, thank you so much for
Thank you.
coming in
Great
today.
being here.
Kurt Dalton from Cannabis.net, Mike Zotos and his pal Austin, thank you for helping us out, including our guests, Jacques Santucci, Dr. Ryan Zachlin, Dr. Jordan Tischler, and, of course, Hillary. Feel better, Hillary. We love you. We miss you. And we'll see you next month here back at Performer TV in Quincy for more Weed Talk Live. Remember, it's a whole new world of weed out there.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to a very special edition of Weed Talk Now. I'm Jimmy Young, the founder of ProCannabisMedia.
I'm Kurt Dalton, the founder of Cannabis.net, your one-stop shopping spot online for cannabis news, information, and videos.
And we are very proud to be having our videos now on Cannabis.net, and we thank Kurt Dalton for that honor. And tonight, speaking of honors, we are honored to have three gentlemen who all in the cannabis industry respect and look up to. One, of course, is Kurt's really good friend, Bruce Linton. Tell me a little bit about Bruce Linton, Kurt.
For those that don't know, he would be on the Mount Rushmore of cannabis business. Ex-CEO of Canopy Growth, received over $5 billion from Constellation Brands. He really brought legitimacy to this niche. He led the way for Canopy and bringing this entire stock market to its heights. And currently, he is involved, I think, with 5 different companies. We'll have to ask him, including MindMed, psychedelic medicines, and mushrooms. So he is constantly having his finger in a lot of pots and hearing a lot of things. So I'm looking forward to see what he says.
And alongside Bruce Linton will be Joe Lasardi, the CEO of Curaleaf, a multi-state operator that is actually right here in Massachusetts, where their world headquarters is. And they are the true MSO, the multi-state operator. And Joe is someone who oversees a very large company, has grown this company, and we really look forward to talking to both of them. And then after we're done with Bruce and with Joe, who are we going to talk to, Kurt?
Favorite Wall Street Journal of Cannabis editor Chris Walsh of MJ Biz Daily. We're going to find out what's going on with the show in the fall. What is he hearing in the industry? When is this going to turn around? And is COVID actually good for the industry? Will it force or push legalization forward? So we get to talk to him.
And we will have all of that. But let's get this thing started now. Well, we're back. Here we are again. Weed Talk Now is the show. I'm Jimmy Young from ProCannabisMedia. Joining me in the Zoom room here is Bruce Linton to my left. Joe Lasardi from Curaleaf is below me. And Kurt Dalton, you are diagonal from me, from Cannabis.net. Thank you guys for joining us. And what else did you have to do besides hang out for another day in your house anyway? So I appreciate that.
Well, it also it gave me a chance to think about what T-shirt to wear. And
if you want to show it off the top, Bruce, feel
right
free.
there
it is, Cannabis.net.
The glory days of Jamaica.
And the story of that goes that when Bruce was on one of our shows earlier, I was wearing a Legals T-shirt, the Legal Seafood Fish, and he thought that was a really cool shirt. Look, Kurt's actually going to hold it up. Roger Berkowitz is a friend, and he presented that to us when he came on our show back in September. And of course, Bruce liked it, so he's like, I want one of those. So I carried it to MJ Biz in Las Vegas and gave it off to Bruce, and he was very happy, and I am too. And Bruce, you said you're getting a lot of good feedback from that.
every time I wear it. I don't know if you could tell when Kurt held it up, but the leaf is formed with a bunch of fish.
Oh yeah. So yeah, let me get a little better look here.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and so it is one of those shirts that everybody thinks is like all the rest, and then they realize, and on the back, turn it around, Kurt, so people can see that it's from
Legal Seafoods.
Legal Seafood. So the whole formation of the fish to the leaf makes a lot of sense, and I thought it's very clever.
It was clever, and it was all part of a ad campaign that Legal Seafoods did in the fall. That was one of the reasons why Roger came on the show, is explain why they were using the 420 code to get your attention. And it aired just before every Celtics game, so I was watching it all the time in the fall. Let's start, Joe, if you don't mind. Let's start with you. Hang on a second, and we don't need her. That's interesting. But anyway, let's start with you, Joe, and get your reaction to what has been everybody uses the word unprecedented. None of us have ever gone through anything like this in our lifetime as far as the COVID-19. As a CEO of a company, not just medical, but also recreational, how difficult has this time been for you and Curaleaf?
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly been difficult. We've had to adjust our business on the fly and do a lot of things that we're not accustomed to doing. But, I have to say that, having looked back on the last couple of weeks, that, I'm incredibly proud of the team and how they've responded. And I think that actually, the fact that we're essential in every state we operate in is a huge validation for our business. So, net, I think that the recognition that cannabis belongs is part of our society for good is a positive step for the industry. Regulators across the country are letting us do things like online ordering, curbside pickup. They're relaxing rules on hiring, a lot of stuff that frankly was unnecessary. So my hope is that as we come through this, some of those things will become a permanent feature of our business, and it'll be a net positive. But obviously it's difficult and everybody's going through challenging times, but I'm an optimist. So I always try to find the silver lining in a bad situation.
Oh, great attitude. We all need that as well. Go ahead, Kurt.
I was going to say, you guys have raised billions of dollars, been in the industry from the beginning. seen the whipsaw market, so I have to ask both of you at this point in time, do you believe Carol Baskin fed her husband to a tiger?
I'm going with yes. She's not. There's no way. He was a food source.
Joe, what do you think? I assume you've watched it.
I'm not. I'm only halfway through the season, so
Okay.
I can't give you my conclusion yet. But they all seem pretty nuts, so anything's possible.
Yeah.
Well, we can see the effects of COVID already on the two guys who have raised billions. One looks like the drug dealer from Breaking Bad. The other guy dropped off my pizzas a few hours ago. So it's effect.
Go ahead, Kurt. I know you have a list of questions you want to ask. I'm giving you the floor.
Sure, I'll go at Bruce first. Obviously, restructuring at your old baby Canopy Growth, 800 million, I think, Canadian, kind of pulling back some of your ideas, basically, you could say, or things you spent money on. Is it, do you look at it and say, ooh, I would have done that, or I would have done that, or is it personal, or when you see kind of Canopy pulling back on some of the things, what goes through your head?
Well, for the most part, I think, the world's changed pretty quickly. And so I think part of the reason Canopy got to be where it was is every time there was an opportunity, we were reacting first or before others identified the need to react. And so it's consistent, right? Do you wish to be in South Africa right now with a bunch of operations? Probably not. How about Colombia? It hasn't played out at all, as the regulators indicated, in the market size. So I think going asset light is a good idea. And when we were looking at Colombia, it was really a hedge on, it was my view that we were never going to transit much cannabis from Colombia to anywhere. But it's cheaper to have a hedge than to be wrong. And so now that that market's played out that way, it goes that route. As far as the Canadian assets, there's just so much product going to be or is available in the market from people who didn't spend any money on infrastructure to create finished goods. And so they're now at a situation where they have no access to capital. They have a bunch of biomass, basically. So why not essentially buy it cheaper and idle some of their resources? So I think it's kind of it's regrettable for the people who lost their jobs. As far as what is the actual number in real cash down, I think a lot of this accounting write-off does capture a lot of goodwill and other intangibles. And so the numbers I've found look a little bigger than the actual reality of the core cash burden that was used to create the stuff.
And Joe, Bruce brought up a good point. The supply is going to be there. We had run an article on cannabis.net that the Google searches on how to grow weed, how to sell weed are taking off as we hit a recession. Hence, people who need an extra $500 to $800, $1,000 a month are trying to figure out how to sell and grow weed. As a guy who's in multiple states selling legal cannabis, what are your thoughts if we hit this recession and everybody turns on YouTube and tries to start growing illegally and selling illegally?
First of all, I think cannabis is a great plant, and I think that people are going to definitely turn to it more for anxiety and other issues during a time of crisis. We've actually seen that in our own sales, so that's definitely an interesting trend that I think will continue. The reality is in the U.S., the cannabis market's $100 billion market, roughly, no matter how you slice it. The regulated market's about $12 billion of that right now, so I'm not concerned at all. There's a huge amount of headroom for regulated operators. I think more interestingly, I think as states recognize the massive budget deficits they have, they're going to look more and more to create tax revenue in the U.S. And that only seems to bode well for future regulations. I'm absolutely confident that New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, Pennsylvania, states all up and down the East Coast are going to eventually turn to cannabis for tax revenue because it's just not good public policy anymore to keep this stuff in the black market when it can be tax regulated and add jobs and be a net economic contributor to a state that has a massive budget deficit. And I think New York's like a $20 billion hole right now.
So Chris Walsh thought the same thing, that the events of COVID will help federal legalization due to jobs, tax revenue. Do you feel the same way, Bruce?
Yeah, and even things like utilization of real estate. Right? What do cannabis companies do? They tend to need to set up shop to produce. They're looking to do that in jurisdictions where there are already less costly buildings, to grow in, so abandoned or derelict warehousing environments. They use retail, and retail is going to be just destroyed after this. So the retail footprint of cannabis is, pretty flexible. So, congratulations, you're now a governor. What are you worried about? You're worried about taxes, employment, and utilization of existing real estate assets. I think cannabis checks every one of those boxes better than any other option they have.
Joe, that must make you feel pretty good, perhaps coming out of this at some point. We get back to some kind of normalcy, whatever that looks like. There seems to be a lot of movement and talk about how the cannabis industry can help the United States economy recover, add jobs, and perhaps with a change of government at the end of this year, perhaps even some movement on the federal level.
Yeah, I mean, look, here's what I say. I mean, I never try to predict what's going to happen, at the federal level, because it's impossible. What I'm supremely confident in is that every election cycle, we're going to continue to get people going to the ballot box and voting for cannabis. You're going to see Arizona pass adult use this fall. You're going to see New Jersey. You're going to see 3 or 4 more states adopt medical. The people are going to keep speaking over and over again. So, the legislature is obviously way out of step already with the American people. I think this crisis will hopefully move them more in that direction. But, we'll see.
Kurt?
What excites you most, if we have some sort of vision of the future? Is it federal legalization, being able to ship it from a Curaleaf, or what do you see as, like, if everything broke the right way, would get you the most excited about the future?
Yeah, I mean, certainly full federal legalization at some point is the hope. Being able to have a very highly optimized supply chain where we're only growing in a couple of parts of the country. Being a vertical operator state by state is obviously inefficient. So that's the goal. To be candid, I don't think that's around the corner. I think that may take a little bit more time. The United States is still 50 states as we're learning through this, through this crisis with 50 governors that are making policies. So, I think you'll see a states' rights bill first, and that will allow states to make their own policy legally. I think a full federal legalization is still some time off. There's way too many flyover conservative states in the middle of the country that don't have medical policies to think that a full federal bill will happen anytime soon.
And Bruce, you've moved on from this petty cannabis stuff. You're now the mushroom king. How has COVID affected MindMed and what you're doing with research? Is it going to be better on the other side for research into like psychedelics that you're working on?
Well, I'd say research generally, right? So part of the thing I was thinking about when Joe was answering is, MindMed's doing clinical trials or research trials now in Perth, Australia. So when you're in Australia, you're doing it. I don't know. I find that there's quite a bit of a similarity between an Australian human, a Canadian human, and an American human. And so if you have a data set that is done on a really equivalent basis of an FDA, but you could not necessarily have done it as efficiently or maybe even at all with the FDA, when that data turns up in America and it is convincing in the case of the trial MC18, where 18MC, I should say, where we're looking at a derivative of ibogaine as a way to basically get addiction minimized, that'll be a pretty, I think pretty big evidence people could turn to. But I think you're going to find that Germany right now is cleaned up from COVID quite a bit, and they're running things like using cannabinoids and certain transdermal delivery mechanisms to try and really effectively treat things like psoriasis. And in Canada, prior to COVID, there were trials running on how do aged care homes deal with the 4 primary ails of being older. Your anxiety, your mobility, your inability to sleep, and diminished appetite. And so I think you're going to start to see data land in the US from around the world that's going to be a very hard argument for the people opposed to it to stick with. And so I'm mainly excited about this fact that we're on a big global planet that doesn't have equal regulatory frameworks, because then you can actually have data to change the bad frameworks. And I think we'd all agree right now, it is suboptimal in the US.
Joe, what can you learn from the Canadian experience as far, and I understand obviously having a federal legalization country north of the United States is not the same thing that you have here in Massachusetts or in any of the other states that you operate in. But are there things that you can learn from our brethren in Canada?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, but before I do that, I just want to, pick up where Bruce left off, 'cause I think it's an important point. And Bruce is without a doubt a visionary, and I believe the new area is as promising, if not more than cannabis. Let's be honest. In the United States, the pharmaceutical lobby is massive and deeply entrenched, and they don't want this evidence out there, right? I mean, we have well entrenched, powerful, well-funded people that are going to try to suppress cannabis. And so I think Bruce is right. Research around the world will hopefully overwhelm all the propaganda, but that may take a little bit of time. With respect to the markets, I've been saying to some, I'm sure Bruce will agree that the U.S. is just structurally different than Canada. Bruce can speak more, obviously fluently about Canada, but in my observations, the difference we have in the U.S. is we really control the supply chain. And, as a result, controlling your distribution point, being able to brand, controlling your pricing, not through regime, really makes our businesses more advantaged. So I think where, our friends to the north had a full federal program, the problem with that program is it was implemented by the government. And so, that's always a challenge. And I don't think it's gone as well as people had hoped. A lot of the operators up there, frankly, got shortchanged by the government. Rolled it out, how slowly they've rolled it out, Cannabis 2.0, all the differentiated products. The store rollouts have been a mess in Ontario. So it's been a real cheap market up there. The irony is in the U.S. we have no federal cooperation, but we have states that allow us to do what we need to do. Frankly, it's been better for us.
Gotcha. Hey, I'm just going to jump in here and play the role of the show host for a second. You're watching or listening to We Talk Now with Kurt Dalton, the founder of Cannabis.net, and yours truly, Jimmy Young, the founder of ProCannabisMedia. This is a podcast and also a vodcast. The podcast, of course, distributed on all the popular podcast distribution networks like iTunes and Spotify. And we also want to thank CLNS Media for being a pro-cannabis media site. They're a sports-centric podcast aggregation site. We certainly encourage you to check them out. And also we want to help and thank our supporters from Rev Clinics, a local dispensary here. Maybe we'll get a chance to actually talk to the Curaleaf people to join the Rev Clinics alongside here at some point. But we have been with Rev Clinics since the very beginning of my podcast, which was In the Weeds when it first started. Now, of course, having Kurt on alongside as We Talk Now co-host, we've taken a completely different step, a big step. And we also want to thank our friends at Weejits.com. And if you haven't checked out the Maze Pipe from Weejits.com, we certainly encourage you to do this because it will cool your smoking sensation. And we all know that there is a virus out there that loves to attack the respiratory system. So we're not saying it can cure it. We're just saying it can ease the influx of smoke into the human lungs. And if you do go to Weejits.com, Weed Talk 2020 gives you a little bit of a discount promo so that you can get yourselves a couple of percentage points off that. Now, back to the discussion. And now I'm going to toss it over to Kurt, who's ready for another question. Kurt?
Sure. Joe, you guys have a big and growing operation in Florida. Great market. Just what were you thinking? The spring break kids, the partying, the people mingling with them a few weeks ago. As a businessman owning businesses, cannabis businesses in Florida, what was going through your head as people were showing that on TV and protesting it? And any thoughts just having all those businesses down there?
Look, here's what I would say. I don't envy any governor or the president trying to deal with this. These are massively uncertain times. Just no playbook for this stuff. So it's really hard to overly criticize. From my perspective, the Florida Department of Health has been incredible partners through this crisis. They've deemed us essential. They're working with us to make sure that we can serve our customers. So, our experience in Florida has been incredibly positive. What's interesting about Florida is that there's been a mass exodus of New Yorkers down in Florida. They're almost overrunning the state right now. So I think it's really muddling the data and the spread of the virus because there's such a mix up of the population. It'd be interesting to see if it was just Floridians alone how the state would fare, particularly given the warm weather and a more outdoor lifestyle type of climate. But we won't know because unfortunately they didn't shut off the spigot fast enough, and the state's just overrun with people from the Northeast escaping the cold and the virus.
You're bang on. I don't know anybody in New York I deal with that has a place in Florida that isn't in it.
Right. It's really crazy.
And Bruce, you had mentioned earlier, Canada doesn't seem to have the flare-up and the kind of the wave coming through. What did they do better or earlier, or what are you guys doing now what's so effective compared to the U.S.?
Well, we do have one massive advantage that our country is a little bit larger geographic, and there's only 1 in 10 for every American. So isolation is kind of natural, right? We're already pretty far apart. But I think just the whole thing, this is week 5 for me, where they've been pushing, just stay away. And I think that's pretty much been it. I wouldn't say that there's been anything else materially different. We didn't have a metro center like in New York that went off in a big way right away. It started in Vancouver, mainly, a little bit, then moved to Quebec and to Montreal. But, when you get a place like New York, which becomes sort of the center of the action, that is I don't know how you contain that when you think about the traffic through that city. And I averted being there, frankly, randomly. I was out marketing our SPAC on the, what day did they have the headline on the Wall Street Journal saying end of an 11-year bull run and pandemic declared? I think that was the 11th or the 12th. That's the day I began marketing my SPAC. Genius. There was no one else on the road.
Yeah.
But we were supposed to go the next day to New York, and we did them all by the phone, and we ended up doing 4 or 5 more days of marketing by phone. And frankly, if you have a chance to have basically a buy-side person who's stuck at their home do a call and or Zoom with you when you're stuck at yours, way better than being in their office. Like, we actually got to work through the whole deck, have a focused Q&A, and it didn't end in 10 minutes or 15 minutes. It was like every one of our calls went really well that way. So I'd say, Canada's been buttoned down, but the reality is until America as well, it doesn't matter if Austria or Germany is doing terrific, who they're going to do business with. They need the U.S. back. So there's a counterparty. And so we're looking forward to you guys getting all healthy and well.
Yeah, so
for those that aren't familiar with what a SPAC is, special investment vehicle, and like 150 million, or it was even more, what are you looking to invest in? You're raising kind of a shell to invest in hemp, and tell people if everybody's looking maybe for Bruce to invest in them. What are you looking for?
Well, so it, even when we were doing it at Canopy, I'm more of an interested person in terms of what the potential of the whole plant is. If you do any digging in about the history of hemp, it's the most bizarre thing that it actually somehow by the 70s got banned because to the best of my knowledge, some of your very early currency was premised upon the necessary fiber from it, and your first flags were made by it, and Mr. Ford had a fleet of cars powered by it. And so what we were looking at is how do we take regions which didn't ban it and prohibit it and the intellectual property that results from that. So if you went to, say, the Netherlands, France, those jurisdictions, unlike Canada and the US, didn't overreact and ban hemp, which meant kind of in a not super spotlight, they continue to work away and say, well, how do we turn this into what it could be? And if you do the analysis, there's about 225 categories of existing products that could be rapidly disrupted by hemp. And that can be the fiber, it can be the herd, it can be the protein, it can be ultimately potentially the CBD. But our whole model was not CBD first, but CBD last, and monetize the plant in a way that makes sense. And so I'm hoping in the 2021 agricultural season in the US, by that point in time, we're going to have processing facilities that will allow people to be on the fields farming a diversity types of hemp. And we'll own all the assets that convert it into the value add elements that disrupt HDPE pellets for plastics to carbon fiber combos to things that would have the ability to convey electricity and de-weight electric cars. And so the plant is way more exciting if you plant the right ones and don't turn it into CBD first and only.
That led me right to ask Joe something. Joe, at Curaleaf, What's the breakdown, or what do you see it on the hemp derived CBD, or just people coming in saying, I just want CBD, not the THC?
Well, I mean, we operate regulated dispensaries primarily, so the massive overweight is people that want THC. But I will say that a lot of our ratio products, so products that do have CBD in it, are also very popular. A small percentage of our customers come in for CBD only, but that's because you can buy it now in the gas station. I mean, CBD
Which
is
we have
everywhere.
a story about. Don't buy it there, by the way.
No, I hear you, but I mean, it's like the CBD market is so overcrowded that I agree with Bruce. I mean, if you're farming hemp for CBD, it's probably a challenging proposition. But the plant does show huge promise for the environment and for so many other reasons that I also do believe in that crop deeply. Ironically, I think at some point, CBD might wind up being the source of all cannabinoids. That could be the interest. It's so cheap to farm, and it's big ways to CBD and the other compounds in that plant into THC and other products. That may be sort of the mother crop that all THC and everything else comes from at some point down the line. So it's so early days in the cannabis industry, and that's the thing I want to emphasize. All the stuff Bruce is talking about around the science and everything. I mean, this is like the first at bat in the first inning. We don't know anything. We are just barely scratching the surface of what these plants can do to the human condition. So there's a long course of discovery we're going to go through together.
And that makes me wonder, Joe, the first time we met, if this is the scratching the surface in the first inning of things, I think we met in a WeWork space in New York City.
Yeah, that's right.
If I recall correctly, because we were having a discussion, which bank do you like? And I said, well, that's not a possible answer. There are none that you should like, but which one can you find of potential utility? And it was a room big enough to fit Boris, you, me, and I think one other guy, but it wasn't much bigger than that. It was
that's right. We
really
had a beer. Yeah, that was probably 2.5 years ago now. It was a good while ago.
Yeah. Now you're doing pretty well, but I wouldn't want to see how that WeWork space is going to turn out.
Just going to say that. You do it better than we work already.
Yeah, we've since moved out of that. We moved to 420 Lexington Avenue, believe it or not.
Nice.
Yeah. So we have a New York office there. But, I'm sure you agree, Bruce. I mean, this is just the early days. There's just no conclusions to be drawn. You can't really pick winners and losers, and yet there's just so much on the horizon, which is what gets me excited. That's why I love the industry, because I think there's so much untapped potential and promise in it.
Yeah.
Joe,
Quit interrupting me, man.
Hey, Bono called. He's looking for the edge. Hold on.
I'd say, like, Joe, I think part of what you're experiencing is what I experienced, that once you build the biggest one that's moving the fastest, it's hard because a lot of folks in the sector probably would prefer to see you trip because that makes them think they're doing better. But you guys are big enough now and doing well enough that, you've got the burden of being the leader. And so I like the way you're speaking about the regulators, right? There's always a chance to throw negative, and you did not throw negative ever. You reflected positively, and usually it's true.
Yeah, well, I mean, Bruce, like the reality is, consistently, I don't believe that the other operators are our competition right now. This is $100 billion market. It's, we represent 12 billion today. There's enough, food on the table for all of us to eat. So, we try to cooperate as much as we can with other operators, give them a hand, support operators in wholesale and markets. We support, GTI in New Jersey and these Cresco and other states. And, we believe that the industry is only going to thrive if we all work together and we really try to get more favorable regulations. And so we definitely feel the burden in being a leader and trying to create a better cannabis industry. But we don't really fear other companies as our competitors, and we frankly hope they all do well. It's just a very big industry, and I think that we, as an industry, we need to demonstrate to regulators that there's professionalism. We can do this the right way. We can make safe products, and that's going to break down all of the bullshit and the propaganda we've been up against for the last 100 years in our country.
Yeah.
Well, we're going through something now that none of us have ever gone through. And I know, Joe, you mentioned food on the table. I'm guessing most of us are not having issues with that, while we have hundreds of thousands of people actually having those issues. I want to ask you guys, you're all working out of your houses. How's that work-life balance working for you guys in your households these last couple of weeks that we've all been kind of holed up here?
Go ahead, Joe. You actually have a job.
This is the segment where I bring my wife in to tell me how much she enjoys me being home 24 hours a day. I suspect it's not very good. I went from never being home to being home way too much. My kids are like, "Who the hell is this guy? Why is he telling us?" So we're all kind of struggling. The home front is probably a bigger challenge than my job right now.
And you're working out of your house full time, right?
Yeah, I mean, you just literally, we have to respect the governor's orders. We have to set an example. So we're going out for groceries, and that's about it. For me, the people that are the real, obviously, heroes in our company, the people on the front lines every day interacting with customers and, working through these uncertain times. We've got 57 dispensaries around the country and people showing up to work every day to deliver products. And so I'd be remiss if I didn't thank all of our employees for doing that and for, getting out there and carrying on the mission. It's now more important than ever. So, frankly, I wish I could do it. No fun being home.
Yeah. And the way I did is when I had an office, every Monday I have 11 phone calls with different people from Europe through different parts of the US and Canada and finish on the West Coast. And then I began by adding a call to a party in Australia, which is at 6:30 p.m. my time on Monday. So I always had Monday to get a view of what was happening, and I've kept that. But like today was Thursday, and it involved me using what I've done, Joe, is I live in a property, it's about 2 acres and has trees around the edge. And some of them are not as healthy as they should be. So I allow myself 1 tank of fuel in my chainsaw per day. And I go out and I cut up the trees. And at this time of year in Canada, none of them have a leaf. So if I'm feeling like I need another tree, I just deem that one unhealthy and down it can come. But that's kind of been it. And if I laugh when you say, Joe, like you're never around, then you're around too much. Last year I had about 130 days on the road and a whole bunch of red eyes going to Germany and stuff. I've now been in my house for 5 weeks. In fact, this room, I've spent more time on this call with you guys in this room than I had in the prior 17 years.
All right.
So this has become my office. It's actually an arcade. That's a pinball game behind me. And this is sitting on a old school bar top Pac-Man game. But it is really, I think the effect of things like Zoom and this and a bunch of the businesses I'm involved in, they are now going to probably shrink their actual physical office space to about 1/3 of what we were carrying before. And there'll be gatherings, but there won't be offices all the time for everybody. And there'll be cycles where we get together rather than carry a huge burden for real estate we don't need now.
Hey, Bruce, I was going to actually ask you that because I was feeling the same way. It's really amazing. I really believe this will change how companies operate. Even in our business, we have people traveling all around the country all the time. I think we're all saying to ourselves now, does that make sense? Is that even necessary with technology? We need offices to do stuff the way we used to? I think it's going to force us into thinking about that stuff more clearly.
Well, and you think about it, you and I are not going to have a sit-down meeting until there's a vaccine. But I bet we talk again before that.
Right.
So the effect of this is that we're going to get used to doing things over the next 6-12 months. This isn't just like the last 5 weeks. So I'm fairly upbeat about some of the tech I'm involved with because of that. I feel quite down on things like office space. Like I don't know how WeWork's going to come out the other side of this. They have hard contracts is really their only advantage, right? When you were a member, whatever they call it, they set the hooks into you pretty hard. And so other than that, I think a lot of people are just going to give up on the spaces.
There was a power of the face-to-face meeting that's been now replaced by this kind of technology. Is that going to change the deals that are made?
I don't know. I bet you're still going to meet face-to-face to do all the final deals, but getting started on something historically has been a problem of trying to figure out when you can get together to start on it.
Right. And certainly there's not going to be a handshake deal anymore. I mean,
No. I think to continue what they were saying, I think this technology is going to get real interesting. One is Joe and I live in the Boston area, traffic, could we get it to where we take 25% of the cars rotating, maybe big companies take a Tuesday and the next big company to alleviate traffic, which would help the environment, and secondarily higher education. As I know Joe's got kids, Bruce has kids there. That is this the breaking point for the $70,000 a year colleges, which has gone up faster than anything, even inflation? That is there something coming where this is the tipping point? Video conferencing, maybe half your time at a dorm or school, but the prices now come down to where you can get a legitimate college education or a post degree through video and through online classes. It's much more legitimate after COVID. So yeah, who knows what happens, to some of these big industries in a year or two. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, Kurt, I had a conversation with a buddy of mine whose kid goes to USC at the tune of $67,000 a year. And we were talking about, we all recognize education is being delivered in an antiquated way right now, right? It's just, you could have a professor and 3,000 kids take a course over a computer. And so my kids aren't college age yet. They're a few years out, but I'm hoping it's actually a shift in the way that education is delivered, and it becomes more economical because, frankly, it's a bit of a relic of the past now, the way it's being done.
I got 2 young kids too. You and me both, Joe. We're going, just bring that MOOC project from Stanford. Make it 10 grand a year for college. We're in.
That's it.
And of course, I'm the old guy in this room right now, but I am teaching using Zoom at Emerson College this semester. And I've got 30 out of 31 kids every Monday and Wednesday, noon to 1:30. And to be honest, if you really do understand how teaching is done, and I'm a big proponent of experiential learning. I want to give assignments. I want these kids to be reading and writing, reading aloud, writing, speaking, all those things that have disappeared from that face-to-face in our own human communication. I put those into my courses because, they'll do it. First of all, they're bored out of their minds. They're happy to make the time to go to class. And second, it's the kind of assignment that you need to have beyond just this. We know that the next few years, we are going to see a lot of changes. And I think everyone in this room agrees that the cannabis industry certainly is poised to take advantage of some of the new ways people are going to be doing business, some of the new products that will be entering the marketplace, and also, how to create jobs. The industry's a little baby. You guys have been talking about how we're just at the very beginning of it. Well, we all recognize you can tax it. You can bring jobs in. There's so many positives to it now. And if everybody would just get away from this stigma. Are you still dealing with the stigma on a daily basis in your business, or has that?
Every day.
Every day.
Every single day. Every day. Look at Massachusetts. I mean, we have a governor that doesn't recognize that cannabis should be as legal as alcohol right now. I mean, it's just one example.
Right.
So Joe, we've written about this a lot, where Governor Baker's decision was we don't want New Yorkers coming over the border right at the New York-Mass line. To me, with the ordering systems that are out there could have been a compromise. I like to call it the Five Guys compromise, where you can order ahead, have it taken out to your car. Couldn't we have found some common ground to get rec? I hope you vote yes on that. But does Baker have anything to stand on as far as saying, well, the lines are too long at rec? We all know that's his fault for dragging his feet for a couple years, but you can't go back now. We have a virus here. Why couldn't we get a solution? Why couldn't we get a compromise on the, hey, stay in your car, we'll bring it to you, we'll let rec go, but don't stand in line?
Kurt, there in Massachusetts, there are 1,600 liquor stores. We estimate there are 350,000 transactions happening every day for alcohol. 40 stores in the Commonwealth can't operate safely. I don't believe it. Everybody gets ID checked. You can very easily limit it to people that are residents of the Commonwealth. The reality is it's just what we've been dealing with, that cannabis has not been accepted. It's not being recognized as part of the mainstream. And so it's easy to make those decisions.
You know, one of my biggest beefs with this whole thing, guys, and I don't know if you've ever listened to the podcast, but I talk about there's no public service announcement. The only stories that the media, traditional media here runs, are the negative stories about the industry. There's no positive how cannabis has changed my life, how cannabis has saved my life stories. You know, Acreage tried to run one during the Super Bowl last year, and CBS nixed it. That spot that they ran had 3 incredible stories about how cannabis has saved. I believe one was a veteran's life, one had cancer. I mean, there are stories out there, but there's no balance in the reporting of it, because you guys know if it bleeds, it leads in media. But there are so many compelling human interest stories, and they're not being told. Frustrations for you guys not to see a public service campaign?
For me, I think the bias indicates that there's still an opportunity that's bigger than allowing everyone in, right? A lot of the major corporations stay away because of the perceived negativeness. So I think it gives guys like Joe and myself a chance to keep building businesses while that bias is annoying. It's actually kind of like a barrier to a bunch of rational actors who should come in. As far as the media coverage, what I found, so I've been watching everything from how's the view in Ohio so that doctors can have better access to prescribing without having to see people, to what does Ontario do, which is they destigmatize cannabis because it's federally and state legal. They start opening stores and then they close the recreational stores for about 10 days, which were the 10 best days, I'm sure, for the illicit trade, because now you've destigmatized something and told people now that you got used to it, you got to go buy it from the guy in the puffy coat. So I see weird moves like that, but I continually see progress. And when I say that, this government that I'm talking about in Ontario didn't necessarily want to have the stores open, but there was enough of an outcry to say, no, it has to happen, that they went back on their word and changed their position. And so I'm kind of curious, Joe, a lot of times I'm hearing, obviously seeing curbside, all these things, but what about format? Like when I think of places like New York or Minnesota, it's not just access, it's what you get to buy.
Right.
Are you having good discussions where regulators are sort of looking at or thinking about that a bit more progressively in this weird state?
I think it's a good question, Bruce. It's probably a little too early to tell, but I would say that I'm encouraged that more form factors will come in. New York's a good example. If you look at New York, there's 20 million people in New York, right? Same amount of population is almost the exact same rules, except factors in New York are a fraction of what they are in Florida. So you see this massive growth in the market, right? You have flower, you have vapes, you have concentrates in Florida, and you have 5 SKUs in New York that don't include flower, can't compete with the guy in the puffy coat. But I think that we've made some progress. We launched the first chewable in New York last quarter, so that's a progress. We launched a ground flower product late last year, and so we're definitely having small gains. But I think more form factors will come in, particularly as people think about the COVID impact on people's lung health. I think that's a strong argument for allowing other form factors like topicals, edibles, and different forms of administration. But we'll see. Again, I'm all optimistic, but it's progress is never linear, and it's just not fast enough for.
What about like labs being a constraint? Are you finding any flexibility in terms of self-testing or limiting the total obligation of testing?
No, we have not seen any relaxation of testing. But what I think some of the most positive and encouraging signs are that again, there's a recognition now by many of these governments. People really rely on these products. Cancer patients can't go a month without getting these products, and so I definitely feel encouraged in that way. The biggest shame, in my opinion, about what happened in here in Massachusetts is that there are a lot of people, including veterans in particular, that use the adult use channel to buy cannabis legally, and those people are all now shut off from the program. And in the United States, 20 veterans commit suicide every day. Millions of veterans are addicted to opioid. Mental health is a huge issue in the veterans community. And there's a complete lack of regard for, that population in our state. And so, on one hand, you have progress, and on the other hand, you find yourself massively frustrated, with the lack of recognition.
Yeah, and if Vapegate taught us nothing or anything, it should be that the safe channel is the regulated channel. As soon as you close it, you've basically enhanced the risk for people.
Yeah,
So,
I mean, there was a study that came out. Sorry, Bruce, to interrupt you, but there's a study that came out a little while ago that showed people that had serious illnesses during that vape crisis. It was like 10-1 in states without legal cannabis. So it was very clearly coming from the channel, not the legal channel. There has been no evidence that it ever came out of the legal channel. And so, by banning vapes in Massachusetts for a couple of months, all you did was force people right back to the source of the problem. And we're doing the exact same thing again.
Absolutely. Kurt?
Let me ask you, what's one thing when this thing gets lifted that you want to do? What do you miss the most? Give me a couple of things, whether it's personal business, that you want to go do when they say it's all clear. Go ahead, Bruce.
I like eating in a restaurant, just going with a group and socializing. As much as it's great to have, we get halfway through breakfast and we start the discussion of what's for dinner currently, but I just find the whole process of getting together with a group of people and having dinner and enjoying the evening. I didn't realize how much that was an important thing.
Have you done a Zoom meeting, Zoom dinner with any friends yet? Yes. Yeah,
and it, it does, sometimes you forget the Zoom's on and everybody's scrambling around for stuff and it comes back. And, those will be memorable events and they're fun, but, just going for dinner with a group of people and being at a decent restaurant and having a couple of hours where the time passes, that's something that I look forward to again.
I miss sports.
Joe?
Joe, how about you?
I'm the same as Bruce. The human interaction and being able to just share intimate moments with people and have conversations, that's the thing I miss. I think that's probably true for a lot of people. You don't realize how, connected we are to each other until you can't be. And then you're like, shit, I really, even going to the office, I just miss being around people in the office and, banter and all that. It's pretty, kids all day is not that mentally stimulating, frankly.
On a personal note, is it much easier to be locked away with your family? You're sitting on that huge bale of marijuana you're sitting on, or the huge bag of mushrooms Bruce has off camera. Does that help?
I'll trade Bruce some cannabis for some mushrooms.
There you go.
Well, I will say one of the things that happened fortunately is Canopy launched their Tweet and Tonics about 3 weeks ago, and they're now starting to fill the channel. And so these are actually amazing beverages. They only have 2 milligrams. They're crystal clear, and they have no calories, no carbohydrates. And so someone said, Bruce, you look like you're a little thinner. Are you exercising a lot? I said, well, that may be a contributing factor, but I think no calories in your beverage is also a positive.
I thought the COVID-19 was like the freshman 15. I went the other way, so.
Me too, unfortunately. Out of stress eating.
Yeah, seriously, right?
Well, guys, I got to tell you, listening to both Bruce and Joe talk to each other was kind of fascinating to me. I think both of you are leaders of this industry in so many ways. I really think that the leadership of the industry is in good hands. And I want to thank you guys for that. I'm the oldest guy in the room. I'm the guy who's at risk for COVID-19. I get it. But I've lived a long time to finally see this happening in my native state. I never thought I'd see 12 championships in 20 years in Massachusetts and have cannabis legal. It's just a crazy, crazy time. But I want to thank both of you for taking the time away from your families. I know how tough that must have been for both of you, especially at bedtime for anybody who has any young kids, right? To join us here for this discussion. And
Joe's like, honey, no, I'm still on.
Yeah, keep it rolling, Jim. I got another hour.
Yeah, yes, it's a 2-hour show tonight.
That's right. Well, we could do this again in a month, guys, because Kurt and I do get together and do these things, excuse me, every month. And we look forward to having you on anytime. I like to wave the flag so that the cannabis industry has a place to go to tell their own stories. And we support that effort here at ProCannabisMedia, and I know Kurt does as well. And Bruce, you liked us when we first met back in September too, in Jamaica.
Yeah, no, and thanks for organizing this. I don't think Joe and I would have gotten around to getting connected properly again. So this has been very beneficial. Thanks, guys.
Sure. And speaking of Jamaica, Bruce, of course, I still have a Rastaman hat and dreadlocks going here. I only pull it out now when I'm talking to you for some reason, or going to a party of some kind. So
I feel like I'm on the Brady Bunch show. Is which square is not a drug dealer? Because I can't tell on this side.
Hey, and for those of you who are listening and watching, we also have 15 more minutes, a bonus conversation with Chris Walsh from MJ Biz Daily. They just cut a deal with LeafWire. And of course, they are always hosting the largest cannabis convention in Las Vegas in December. And for now, that is still on. And let's hope we can all meet down there in December of 2020 and continue this conversation.
Well, here we are with a bonus part of Weed Talk Now. I'm Jimmy Young from ProCannabisMedia.
And I'm Kurt Dalton from Cannabis.net.
And joining us as well is Chris Walsh, who is the CEO of MJ Biz Daily. And Chris, welcome to Weed Talk Now.
Thanks for having me on again. I appreciate it.
No, happy to have you here. Last time we talked, we were in the middle of MJ BizCon, the biggest one. I believe it was your 6th in the Las Vegas Convention Center. Man, does it seem like it was only a few months ago? A lot has gone on between December and now, huh?
Yeah, I mean, we used to call, we have a term pot years in the cannabis industry since we started nine years ago. And every 2 or 3 months, as anyone in this industry knows, feels like a year or two. I can tell you that has been accelerated with all the chaos going on now. So every day feels like 3 or 4 months now, and every month feels like a year. So yeah, a lot has changed.
In fact, even this past week or the last few weeks, a few things have changed with MJ Biz Daily. I understand that you've formed some kind of a promotional partnership with LeafWire, our friend Peter Vogel out there. And you guys in Colorado, man, you guys know how to make deals, huh?
Yeah, we've been talking with Peter and LeafWire for a while, trying to figure out if there was an opportunity to work together and how. And we were able to find a nice path forward that really is going to, especially in this environment, help professionals and executives and leaders in the industry better connect with each other and get the resources and information that we provide to kind of help them navigate this situation and grow their businesses and keep their businesses afloat and really find their tribe together in different segments of the industry in what is now a digital world.
Chris, what's the plans? I'm sure you're making contingency plans. You guys have had layoffs just like everybody else in the industry. But if Vegas can't happen in the fall, is there a virtual plan or a hosting at a different time and place? Kind of what is your long-term planning if we get that far?
Yeah, we had some furloughs recently as we kind of navigate this current situation. We don't really have any idea of what's around the corner, like most of you out there. And so we're really moving cautiously now to make sure that, we can continue to be the leading, resource for connections and information in the industry and that we're going to come out on the other side of this in an even stronger position. As we look forward, we've run a bunch of different scenarios for what can happen. A lot of this is out of our control. It's out of everyone's control right now. And again, with that uncertainty, we have various ways we're going to move forward to continue, serving as this resource for the industry. So we're moving ahead with MJ BizCon now in December. And, we're going to start allotting space to exhibitors on the floor soon. There's still a lot of interest, not only in the US, but from companies in China and globally. And I know that sounds odd right now in the situation we're in, but the cannabis industry is starving for information, for connections to do business together. And so we hope to bring that, we were going to bring that to people one way or the other. So no matter what, we're going to have a digital and virtual component to MJ BizCon. We have some plans we're going to announce here in the next couple of days about our virtual event strategy and what we're doing on the editorial side, to provide everyone content and information. And as I said, connection. So yeah, we're pursuing multiple paths, and hopefully we're going to see everyone in Vegas in December. And if something prevents us from doing that, we have great backup plans to still give everyone that value in just a different format.
You're a guy that travels around the world. I think I've sat next to you at probably shows in 4 countries now we covered. All of us are feeling locked in, but what's it been like for you? Because you are on the road. You are a road warrior. How has it been hard at first? You enjoyed it for a little while. Now you're ready to get outside, or where are you at?
Yeah, it's been tough. And Kurt, I've seen you at many events in different countries. Like a lot of people, had a lot of big plans. Was going to take my daughter to Disney World. And by the way, my daughter's really upset with me, so I hope she doesn't, on this. I took her computer away, and she's young and has been on the computer a lot, so she's very angry at me right now. So apologies if there's any interruption.
Welcome to the club, buddy.
Exactly. We were going to go to Disney World, but for work, I was going to go to Brazil. We were going to we had an event in Denmark. We had lots of travel coming up, both personal and for our business. And, traveling is my personal passion. And it's been fortunate that I've been able to do that for business as well. So this has been hard for me on that end, but I always just kind of ground myself and center myself and say, a lot of things could be worse. There's a lot of people in bad situations. I don't know anyone personally who's been affected by the virus. And so I thank, my lucky stars for that. And as hard as it is, it's something I can adapt to, obviously, because it could be worse.
Well, I'll tell you what, though, Chris, the cannabis industry alone, without the COVID-19 virus, is challenging enough. Now you throw in the fact that nobody in the cannabis industry is going to be able to get any kind of federal stimulation money or anything like that. And here in Massachusetts, where we record this program, we produce this program, the governor, Charlie Baker, once again won another battle in court this week, where the judge has actually upheld his ban of adult use cannabis recreational stores from opening during this stay-at-home order. Have you ever thought that the challenge would be including all those things that have to go on with cannabis because it's still federally illegal? Now you throw in the virus. I mean, how much more can you guys handle?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great point. This industry is resilient. Since we started in 2011, the amount of pressures and stresses and unexpected developments and challenges this industry has faced have probably been as much, if not more, than almost any industry out there. And what I've learned over time is it's resilient, and it comes back, and it comes back stronger. And the silver lining in a lot of this is that although we see what's happening in Massachusetts, which is very unfortunate, a lot of states have basically said cannabis businesses are essential. And if you just think about that in the context of this, it's pretty amazing when you think it's illegal federally and there's still a stigma around it, and there's still opposition to it, or people that are afraid of it. And you have all these states that are saying, no, there's only a couple businesses that are allowed to remain open. And one of them is medical marijuana dispensaries, and in some cases recreational. That is pretty amazing. And that gives me hope that when we come out of this, there's going to be a lot of pain, and they can't get, businesses can't get federal stimulus money. Some of them can't sell. They don't have as big of a market. Consumer spending is going to drop. It's going to be painful for the cannabis industry too. I think the industry is going to fare better than a lot of other industries. Doesn't mean it's going to fare great, but it's going to fare better. And so those companies that can survive this, can adapt, that embrace the change and understand that business has to be done differently, and they've got to get through this period. I think the industry as a whole is going to be good, in a really good position to come roaring out of the gates when we get out of this mess. And I do think it is going to help legalization and acceptance efforts. I absolutely believe that down the road, because we're going to need to jolt this economy. And people, governors and federal politicians are going to be looking at where can we do that. This could be one of the ways.
Well, that's exactly the next question I had, based on an article we wrote for you, but you just covered that. So you must have been, this isn't your first rodeo, I can tell. As I described, for people that don't know who you are in your magazine, you're the Wall Street Journal of cannabis, and you really have your pulse on worldwide. What's some of the good things you think will happen? Obviously, you just covered legalization. What can we tell the cannabis industry from your perch about the stuff to look forward to, and what you think will happen?
Yeah, I mean, to reiterate, no one can predict the future. I've learned in this industry, you can be very foolish very quickly by trying to say what's around the corner. But having been involved intimately in this industry for a very long time, almost a decade, I am very optimistic that it will lead to federal change faster than if this had not happened, and it may convince other states to legalize again as we come out, as they're looking to help the economy. So that's one, potentially very big silver lining. And then, in every crisis, you have to look for the opportunities. And so the companies that do that and the leadership teams that are able to get their head around that things aren't going to go back to where they were 2 months ago, and it's all going to be the same. You got to think about where the puck is going down the road and position yourself to be there. So I think the industry and companies can come out of this stronger, and that's what I'm trying to do with our company. Jury's still out on if we can all navigate through this, but I think there could be some good fundamental changes to how businesses operate, and the innovation that has to occur in a time like this, so you stay afloat. And then when you get out of this, that innovation carries forward, and the industry might be doing things that it wasn't doing before that are really beneficial for customers, for patients. And one example is, some cities or states have loosened restrictions or bans on delivery. So when we look down the road, if those stick, that's a whole new business model and a whole new way to get the product to people and a whole new connection you can make with patients and customers. And, if that works okay, that might be another silver lining in this, is that will be permanent in some areas and may become a bigger part of the industry in general, which again, I think is a good thing to have more options, creates more business opportunities. So, I do think cannabis, this isn't going to affect the long-term demand for it. Consumers will have less money, so we all have to prepare for the fact that even though they really want it or need it, they might not have the funds to get it or to get as much. So if we can weather this storm, circle the wagons, get through it, this might even increase demand down the road and get new people into the fold, because they are at home and they don't know what to do with themselves. On the recreational side, maybe some people are saying, I'm going to try this. I don't know what else to do. I'm just sitting here. On the medical side, maybe they're more willing to try this to help them. So that's how I'm viewing it.
Is there any way that the industry itself can perhaps come up with some way to help and aid some of the little mom and pops and the little grow farms and the little people that are in the cannabis industry? We all know that there are investors out there, and we know that investment is always a gamble, especially with a federally illegal product. But is there any movement at all of a private bailout fund out there for the cannabis folks, the little guys?
That is a great idea. And I'm not aware, and doesn't mean it's not happening, as I've had to retrench and focus on our business. I'm not aware of any big efforts to do that. I think, unfortunately, we're hit with a double whammy. I think if this was a recession or a downturn, I think we'd all gladly welcome that versus the current situation where there's a recession/downturn and the uncertainty and unprecedented nature of this right now, where no one knows what's around the corner. No one can predict safely what's going to happen in 4 weeks, in 2 months, in 4 months, in 18 months. And so I think it's very hard for people, even if you're doing okay financially, even if you have a big buffer, to commit to something like that. And so I think it's a noble cause, and maybe if we can get some leaders in a room to talk through that, we can come up with an idea. I know now the sense is everyone's, again, if you have money to spend, you are protecting it and you're sitting on it. And as much as you want to help others and smaller businesses and those that might be struggling to survive, even if you're an investor, everyone is afraid right now. And so, maybe as we go down this and get some more clarity, an idea like that can take off.
What's your opinion? You mentioned not knowing, and you're right, no one knows the future. There seems to be two thought. One is we're going to open up around May 1st and start playing, basketball and football games and see how it goes. The other is we'll see you in 2022. Just personally, or what do you think is the more future look that you would agree to?
Yeah, and as the CEO of our company, I have to look at all possible scenarios. So I've been very, very close to this and trying to figure out how we should go forward. So, for us, it's preparing for any way. I don't think, that things are going to magically open up in the next couple of weeks. The problem in the U.S. is, every state has handle it differently. So people look to Europe and say, oh, well, Germany's kind of opening back up in Italy, but you have to compare Europe to the United States. If Europe operate as a group like this, it would look far different. And so the US, while states are going to operate that way, it's not going to be like the US opens back up like in Italy or Germany or Denmark. It's going to be like a California does that way, and this state might be behind. And that's the hard part of this, is they're all going to be moving at different speeds, and that's going to affect each other's economies and the cannabis industry. So the way I'm viewing it is, there's going to be, hopefully a gradual loosening. And we just all have to, again, batten down the hatches. There's not going to be something, if anyone is, again, thinking that in 3 or 6 months, their business or this industry is going to look like it did in January, I think they're going to have a hard time adapting. We just all have to adjust to this new reality and know that we don't know the answer. So my personal way of doing that is saying we're preparing for all scenarios. We're being conservative because we don't know, and I can't sit here and say I know. I don't even have a feeling, except that we're going to have to get the economy going at some point. And what that looks like, I don't know, but we want to be ready for whatever that looks like and however that rolls out.
Well, we certainly know we're in a historic time. We thought we were just trying to keep that green wave moving through Washington and into business. And now we've got this big, a pothole in our world that we've got to figure out a way to get out of. And Chris Walsh, I really appreciate you taking the time out of your busy day. And I really hope you'll be a kind dad and give your computer back to your daughter.
Oh, it's a constant battle. And just to close out, we did furlough 30% of our staff, but we did it because we don't know what's around the corner, and we hope and expect to bring them back with our new plan forward and our enhanced plan. And so, we're betting on a way to navigate this and hopefully, get back to normalcy over time. If we were approaching a really dire mode, this would have looked different, our internal moves. And I know a lot of businesses out there are considering what to do and how they approach this. And, we're all in this together, and we're all going to get through it together. And I think we're going to learn a lot through this, and we'll be ready for whatever comes down the road.
Fair enough. All right, Chris Walsh, thank you so much again for joining us. For Chris Walsh and Kurt Dalton, I'm the host of Weed Talk Now from ProCannabisMedia. My name's Jimmy Young. Remember, it's a whole new world of weed out there. Use it responsibly, stay safe, and stay sane. Weed Talk and In the Weeds are two productions of ProCannabisMedia supported by Revolutionary Clinics, one of the top medical cannabis dispensaries in the Massachusetts area, now with 3 locations in Greater Boston, 2 in Cambridge and 1 on Broadway in Somerville. Rev Clinics has a patient-first mission. They will customize your needs as a medical patient with the proper titration and combination of strains, flavors, and products. Rev Clinics, where the patient comes first.
We are Pro Cannabis Media.
Hey, Jimmy Young here, and welcome to Pro Cannabis Media's live stream and soon-to-be Cannabis Chat from Pro Cannabis Media. I am the founder of Pro Cannabis Media, so I get to interrupt and talk whenever I want. We are a multimedia strategic marketing agency that produces original content that we are sharing here on Twitch TV now. Now, I've hosted the podcast In the Weeds with Jimmy Young since March of 2018, and we've produced hundreds of episodes and have totaled thousands of downloads of that podcast and views of that program on our distribution network of like-minded internet sites. Now, one of those sites is cannabis.net. It was founded by another Massachusetts native named Kurt Dalton. He and I co-host a Weed Talk news show, a news and commentary show that we produce weekly on Thursday nights for release on Fridays. Other contributors to that show are Deborah Borchardt from the Green Market Report, Phil Adams from the Vote Pro podcast out of Washington, D.C., and MJ Biz International Solomon Israel, who reports on the Canadian cannabis scene. Now, coming up on Wednesday at 4 p.m. Eastern, I'll be back in this studio to host Cannabis Chat Live, an interactive program featuring more of the best of content of our interviews with some of the biggest names in the cannabis industry, like Bruce Linton, the ex-CEO of Canopy Growth, Nick Kovacevic, the CEO from Kushco, Jamie Pearson from Bang Nation. You know, they're the #1 edible company in Canada. Steve D'Angelo, the father of the cannabis advocacy movement and the founder of the Last Prisoner Project. Joe Lusardi, the CEO of Curaleaf, the largest multi-state operator in the U.S., and many, many more. So tune in to Chat Live on Wednesday, September 9th from 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. Eastern, or watch it on demand when you want to. Now, I'll have some interesting guests on the phone or in studio for that Cannabis Chat show, but it's really going to be about you, the viewer, who is interested in this whole new world of weed out there. We'll answer your questions and share excerpts from the various people that I've interviewed over the years and who I have been learning about this new industry from. For those of you who might be interested in sports, and I know a lot of gamers on Twitch are into sports, I used to be a full-time sportscaster in the New England area on TV, where I actually won an Emmy Award for a sports talk show for kids I co-founded back in the 90s, probably a decade when quite a few of you were born. So subscribe, like, share, and follow Pro Cannabis Media. We want to give a voice to the cannabis industry and now give you a chance to chat on Cannabis Chat Live, Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays from 4 to 6 p.m. Eastern on Twitch TV /ProCannabisMedia.
We are Pro Cannabis Media.